Hi everyone, welcome. We're going to give it just a minute for folks to finish logging in, so sit tight.
Setting this up for us today, and welcome to everyone who joined us this morning. We appreciate you taking the time out of your day to spend the next 20 or 30 minutes with us to discuss smarter collaboration for better human connection and what that could mean for your organization. So I want to go over the agenda. The first thing we want to do is start out with some quick introductions so you can get to know us a little bit. My name is Dan Johns, and I'm VP Head of Sales Operations. And these on the bottom here, little avatars, represent what we call my business personas, or the top 3 hats that I wear when communicating and collaborating with others. As you can see, I'm a supporter, which means I'm service and support driven, and I enjoy helping others for the good of the team. I'm also an improviser, which means that I like to challenge the status quo for the benefit of the organization. You'll see more of these business personas later, but they're just a nice shorthand to sum up your overall Humantelligence talent profile. So Larry, why don't you say a quick hello and give us a quick introduction to your personas.
Thank you, Dan. Hello, everyone. I appreciate you being here today. My name is Larry O'Keefe. I'm the account executive, which really translates into executive sales for the organization. You'll see my personas are a little bit different. Don't be afraid that mine says Maverick. None of these are negative. They're all positive, and you'll see how it all comes together as Dan proceeds through here. My background is 22 years in the HCM space with companies such as Oracle, Ultimate Software, and a few others. So we welcome you, and Dan, don't just take it from there.
Thanks, Larry. And yeah, it's a good point. I did notice that of all the registrants, there were some super large companies and some super small companies and everywhere in between. And this is a tool that can be used by all those. So, Larry does have big company background. I have big company background in my past, but I've also been working for a relatively small organization for the past 5 or 6 years in Humantelligence. So, we've got both bases there. So now that we, you know a little bit about us, we wanted to take a few minutes and learn a little bit about you and your organizations. We know some from your registration, but we have a couple of poll questions that we'd like to ask, and who doesn't like poll questions, right? We'll follow that with a brief discussion of the problem and the challenge that Humantelligence solves and what exactly we mean by smarter collaboration for better human connection. Then we'll pop the hood and give you a glimpse of smarter collaboration in action before we finish up with some Q&A. And again, I think we're probably about 20 minutes of presentation and then 10 minutes of Q&A. And hopefully that sounds good to everyone. Now let's get started with those poll questions. So the first one is, what type of work environment is your company currently operating under? So we have 4 choices here. So remote, and this is if you're fully remote, and maybe you've always been fully remote, but it doesn't matter if you're fully remote now. If you're hybrid, like basically a lot of companies now. And then the other 2 are if you're actually back in the office, but you have 1 location, versus number 4, which is your distributed multi-office. So, a lot of larger companies have several offices. You're back in the office, but you're still disconnected from people physically by geography. So I think the poll is, or if it's not, Vic is going to open that for us now, and you'll have 30 seconds to a minute to answer that one. All right, they're already starting to come in as I'm talking here. We'll share the results when this is over. I don't know if you can all see them as we go here, but I can. We'll give it a couple more seconds here. We're about 80% of people have voted. We'll always allow for the fact that some people might have stepped away. I don't see any more votes coming in, so let's. That's a good number. Let's look at the results here, and I don't know. I think you can all see them, but if not, I'll share them with you here. So not particularly surprising. There are about 11% who are fully remote, And again, maybe like Humantelligence, you've been fully remote since, or I guess it's called fully distributed, since the inception of your company, or maybe it was a post-COVID thing. 70% are hybrid, which is typically what we see in the market. And then 11% are in office, but one location, and 7% are in office, but a distributed or multi-office situation. So kind of what in line with what we were expecting, but interesting to see that with the group that we have here today.
Hey, Dan, Dan, while you're on that, I'd like to make a quick comment. In the marketplace, most of you have probably seen some of the news with Disney. They're asking them, the remote workers, to return, and they're resisting. Also, Amazon resisting the 3-day work week. So there's all sorts of, I'd say, a tug of wars going on with this today. And a lot of it has to do with that human connection around the water cooler. And you'll see today how we approach that and how we address that. And just one other interesting fact, Google was way ahead of this. Pre-pandemic, they used to let you earn based on merit and trust your remote days. So I think the industry is looking for some compromise solution, and we believe we can help you get there.
Great, thanks, Larry.
You're welcome.
So the next poll question, which you should be seeing now, is of the following, what 2 challenges, so pick 2, are you giving the highest priority to right now? So it's team collaboration and performance. Is it all about teams right now? Is it employee retention and engagement? Is it diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging? And is it leadership and hiring assessments, or company culture? And now maybe all of these, or maybe just a few, but the top 2 that you're prioritizing right now. And given the title of this webcast, it's not surprising that the results that we're seeing, but they're still coming in here, so I'm not going to divulge until we're finished here. I now see a timer that says, it's counting upwards though, so okay, I guess I can. We're getting close though to the same percentage that voted in the last question, so I'm gonna assume that that's good. Okay, so with most of the votes in, and now I guess now we're sharing the poll results, it seems like. So 60, almost a tie between team collaboration, performance, and employee retention and engagement. And you know, DEIB, I'm sure, I know it's a priority for a lot of people. It's maybe not the audience that's on this call, maybe not the top 2 priorities. And then we see, you know, leadership. So all of these are a priority for some people. It's the top 2 priorities for some people on this call. And the good thing is, with smarter collaboration for better human connection, we address all of these. So, you know, team collaboration and performance often seems like it's the kind of the most obvious one, but all of these will be touched on. We'll cover that as we go through. So thank you for indulging us with those poll questions. It helps us to know kind of the audience we're talking to. So thank you for that.
I'd like to interject, please. Back to marketplace. So we do work with Gartner in the areas of engagement and retention. And you've seen staggering numbers out there regarding retention. You know, it's still a big issue in the industry, billions and billions of dollars in the marketplace. And Gartner came out with a figure of $18,591, the cost to replace an employee. Now, different industries are lower, higher, but they came up with that. And the median turnover globally is roughly 18%. So those numbers, you know, they range from you're losing $33,000 to 1.7 billion, depending on how big your organization is. So again, our focus on those top 2, as Dan mentioned, makes a difference in terms of economics.
Great, thanks, Larry. All right, so what is the problem or challenge? You guys, I think I'm sharing the screen, right? Yeah. What is the problem or challenge? By the way, I did tell Larry, because I can't see him, so I can't see if he's got a chime in piece. So I told him just to interrupt me. So that may happen through the show here. So what is the problem or challenge that Humantelligence set out to solve? So for the past 10 years, or so, technology has been changing the way we all work and making it more possible to work remotely. Obviously, a lot of companies like ours were remote even before the pandemic. But then, of course, came 2020, where due to COVID, the opportunities for human connection in the workplace plummeted, obviously not being in the workplace, right? So while some predicted that things would go back to the way they were post-pandemic, it's just not happening, right? The vast majority of organizations are still offering remote and hybrid work environments, as we saw from this call. And as a result, the human connection are decreasing and are predicted to continue to decrease, right? So where does that leave us, right? I'm going to go through some of these stats pretty quickly because I think it's likely that everyone on the webcast, is familiar with these, and maybe you're probably living through these. But obviously, remote work has increased, from something as low as below 5% to almost 40%, nearly over 2/3 of companies have some sort of hybrid or remote work environment, and obviously that holds true with our polling group here today too. And interestingly, most employees, vast majority that are polled, like the idea of working remote and want to stay remote or hybrid. Obviously, as you saw from the Disney example that Larry gave. And interestingly, a percentage of them also acknowledge that there's a decline in collaboration. So they want to be remote, maybe lack of commute, more time with their family, more autonomy over their schedule or whatever. But they do recognize that there's a decline in collaboration that comes with, this is decline in collaboration and isolation. It's really a decline in collaboration that comes from that increase in isolation, right? So obviously that's the problem, right? Remote and hybrid work makes peer-to-peer and team collaboration more challenging, and it negatively impacts not only team performance and engagement, which you would expect, but just all overall company culture, right? We hear that all the time from our clients. A lot of times what they're saying is, hey, we need help. Our company culture used to be really strong, and now we're in this remote work environment, and it's kind of falling apart. So this is the problem. There's more evidence here. One of our partners, 6th Sense Slintel, did a study last fall of the most search terms on Google, and the number one search term was by over 5% was team collaboration, and that was followed by, they're not listed here, followed by employee engagement, team performance, and DE&I. So clearly, all of you out there are having the same problems and the same priorities. Another partner of ours.
Pardon me, Dan. I'm sorry. Yep. Just to touch on collaboration for a second, because the word is tossed around, used quite a bit. You Google it, and you'll probably see communication tools when you look up collaboration. You'll see Slack, you'll see Teams, you'll see Zoom, you'll see all these things, right? We are not that. We're not the communication piece of that. We're the ingredients within that allows them to get the deeper human connection. Again, back to the water cooler type approach. So when you talk about collaboration, yes, we're part of it, but we're the human part of it. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Larry. All right, I think I'm sharing again.
Yes.
Let me know if I'm not. So another partner of ours, Enboarder, one of the leading onboarding software companies in the world. If you're not familiar with them, check them out. They conducted a survey of employees to determine the top reasons why they feel disconnected from work. And the number one answer was that they had different personalities and work styles from their coworkers. You can see here 34%. The second one, manager doesn't provide, 29%, so almost 5 percentage points difference. But what's really happening here, right? It's not just that their coworkers are different from them, but also that they feel they have no way to understand or bridge those differences, right? So if you know that you're different from someone, and there's a way to manage that, there's tools to manage that, it's less of a challenge, right? So the fact is that they're different and they don't know how to kind of bridge that gap. So how does Humantelligence help understand and bridge those differences? Well, we have a solution that we feel is the future of peer-to-peer and team collaboration for improving human connection. And simply stated, I'm just going to read this because it's eloquently put, I think. We're a scalable plugin tool delivering personality assessment insights for better understanding, connecting, and communicating by the tools that you use every day. And those are Outlook and Teams and Gmail and the Google Calendar and Zoom and Slack, and there will be others as well, right? And what we like to say is we don't make the collaboration tools you use, we make them better. So that's what we're going to show you today. Before we jump into that, I want to take a pause and just check in with Larry to see if we had any burning questions that people wanted to ask before we jump into a demo.
Dan, there's nothing right now.
Nothing right now. Larry, do you have any questions?
No, I'm great. So if you want to proceed, that's fine. And I'm sure we'll get some questions as you go.
All right, perfect. So I'm going to show this in Outlook. I'm going to show Teams. And if there's time, because we are making, well, we're coming up on almost 20 minutes. So, but for those of you Google users out there, it works a similar way in Google. So the same functionality. And you would just add this, simple to add in Outlook and Teams, you just go to the add-ins. And then for Google, you just go to the Google extensions and you add Humantelligence. You could find that right now if you're at your desk. It obviously won't work unless you have a Humantelligence assessment, but you can find the add-in. So first, let me show an email. One of the great ways to communicate and collaborate better via email. Let's see, I'll put Juan Betancourt, our CEO, in here, and put another couple people here. It's Larry. Larry not in here. We don't use Outlook, so these are just taken from my contacts list here. As you can see here, and I'm trying to move the GoToWebinar out of the way here. You see up at the top here, there are two buttons. One says Talent Profile, one says Culture Analytics. So the Talent Profile will give me, will pull up the profile of anyone that's in this email thread or in this email I'm about to compose. So let me click on Juan. And again, without logging into Humantelligence, we have single sign-on. Your employees and you will have access to this. I see Juan Luis Betancourt, and I see his personas. So he's a maverick, like Larry, architect and helper. If I hover over it, it tells you exactly what that means. And again, these are shorthands that people get really familiar with after a while. Let's say I want to go a little deeper and I want to send an email to Juan. I can now see tips for communicating with Juan. So these first four are ones that are based on the science, so based on his assessment. And these are also ones that resonate with him. You have an opportunity as an individual to hide some of these if they don't. If you say, you know what, I don't like to take time to break the ice, but I want to get down to business. Now, here's how this works great. I'm a person who, I'm very friendly and chatty when I'm with people socially, but when I'm working and I'm super busy during the day, I would send an email to Juan saying, here, Juan, here's my question, what's my answer? And it wouldn't even occur to me, particularly if I don't know him very well, if you're in a distributed environment, but even knowing Juan, it might not even occur to me that that would be off-putting for him, right? Even if it's subconscious, that I'm just being very abrupt to be like, whoa, wow, this guy's being, he's very abrupt. But this reminds me, let's take time to break the ice. Okay, not something that I would necessarily do, but I'm going to take the first sentence and say, hey, Juan, the Dolphins had a great season this year. He's in Miami. Or how are your kids doing? Something like that. Or how was your weekend? That's going to put him in a better mood to reply to the email. And believe me, I give you examples. I know we have we're on a time crunch here, but it's incredible how much of an impact this has. So that's one example. You can also see here where Juan has added some free text. I like to be text message. Don't leave a voicemail. And he gives his phone number right there. So practical tips as well. So that's for the email. You also have tips for motivating someone, right? What really gets them energized, gets them going, enjoys helping others, but appreciates the sincere thank you. Well, you may not be someone who just says thank you a lot, but that will remind you to do that. It's going to allow for a much better interaction with that person. And then there's also learning style. People have different styles of learning, right? Here he likes to take an organized and controlled approach to his new material. I can also compare with him, and this is probably the most used feature in our technology, because it could be direct report to manager, peer to peer, just seeing how closely, how similar you are, or how complementary you are. And you'll see this number here, 35. That's 0 to 100. 100 is someone identical, and 0 or totally different. And obviously that doesn't exist in nature. So typically you see, low 30s, mid 30s to upper 70s, upper 80s. So why don't I have the lower end of that scale, complementary profiles? We've been able to work together really well for the last 5 years because we are aware of where we're different, and it no longer becomes, particularly around the motivators, where it tends to be where that friction happens in the workplace, because they tend to be beneath the surface, right? Our assessment does measure 3 scientific lenses. So behaviors is one. If you're familiar with DISC, ours is based on the DISC framework. It's how you do your work, right? We also measure motivators, or what we call, or some people call values. So how you do your work. So if you're dealing with like a Hogan or Lominger, they are really good at analyzing or evaluating values or motivators. We do both of these 2 lenses in 9 minutes. And now you can immediately see where our potential conflict points are and where we're aligned in our motivators. So very helpful when you're either emailing or just interacting with someone. Work Energizers is a proprietary lens that our science team developed to get at what type of work environment, whether it's systematic or creative, energizes someone, fulfills them the most at work. So are you energized by working with people or working with facts, or do you like structure versus more flexibility? And that can be really valuable. You could have 2 employees who have very similar behaviors and motivators, and yet, you know, one is really happy on the job and one isn't, because, you know, they're motivated, they're really energized by that type of work environment, or they're not. So those 3 in a side-by-side comparison. Now I could click through here and get to Juan's entire profile and look at that in detail. But I'm going to move on here and show you in the calendar. So now this could be a team meeting, or could be actually a cross-functional meeting. So it might not be a team, might be just a group of cross-functional folks that are going to be joining and again, I'm moving around this. I don't know if this is switching for you, my screen, but I'm trying to move the webinar out of the way. So in this case, I could click on talent profile, and I would see all the individual profiles I could click on for each one here, and do the same thing I did in the last email screen. But if I click on culture analytics, it now pulls up what I call a culture map of the folks in this meeting, and provides meeting tips. So again, like I said before with Juan here, likes to take time breaking the ice and not rush into talking business. That's really helpful for me, because I'm someone who's really busy. I do a ton of Zooms all day. The last thing I want to do is like waste people's time. So I typically start a meeting, okay, here's where I want to end up. Let's start, let's go. Let's not waste everyone's time. But I might take a different tack with this meeting, knowing that people are going to want to talk about their weekend, or what's coming up for the weekend, or did they watch the Super Bowl? And that's going to make the meeting just be much more productive and enjoyable for everybody. So those are helpful. And then you can also see kind of where people lie on these 3 different scientific lenses. So you can see me as outgoing and spontaneous and freeform. I'm someone who likes to talk, and I'll give my opinion most of the time without being asked. But what about all these people that are deliberate, reflective, cautious, steady? Kerry Leidick, one of the smarter guys in our company, always has something really of value to say. But in my mind, like subconsciously, I think, well, if someone has something to say, they would say it, because that's the way I'm wired. But this helps remind me that there are people that are wired differently, and I'm going to hold space for people that are wired differently, right? And I'm going to allow space for these people, like our host here, Vic, and Carrie and others to participate, right? And maybe if it's an important meeting and I want feedback, I'll let them know ahead of time that I'm going to want their feedback. But just again reminds us that we're wired differently, and to hold space for those people. You know, another interesting one is, I mentioned work energizers. Now you see here that there's kind of equal number of people that are energized by structure versus flexibility. But let's just say I was someone who was highly structured. You know, micromanager is what we say when it was a negative term, but sometimes people like a lot of structure, and that's really good. But if everyone on this meeting is flexible, they're going to want minimal direct controls. And in that case, I'm probably going to want to check my normal style, not be so, you know, maybe give them a longer leash, right? And it's going to make the project or meeting much more productive. So that's an example. We've got other views in here if you want to just see like what are the work energizers of this overall group of a team or group that's meeting. There's a couple different views here. Let me go jump into, because I do want to save some for Q&A, and we can stay on after too. So if any of you guys want to stay on, I can do that. The last thing I'll show you is how this interacts with Teams, and then we'll open up to questions. Hopefully some of you guys are putting some in there for us. So now I'm in Microsoft Teams, and I can see every member of my team here, and I can see what their personas are. And I can do a couple different things here. So let's look down at Carrie, who I mentioned earlier. And I can compare with me and I can compare with the team. So let me compare with me. And you see that side-by-side comparison again. You see that Carrie and I are also, my internet cooperates. Essentially, you see the same side-by-side. So it's better graphically represented than you saw in Outlook. But you see that side-by-side comparison. And then you can also do it with a team. Let me try someone different, see if that works. Let me try Beth here, although we're more similar than dissimilar. It's not wanting to cooperate. So you would see that side-by-side comparison. And then again, same in calendar. It also works in chat and in your video call. So you can be on a video call and pull up that same interaction, right, with the team. And let's give it one more college try. And then let me pause here. And actually, I'm going to pause here. Oh, there we go. So this is the view of that person with the team. And then again, you can see that side-by-side view as well. Let's see if I'll push our luck here. And something with the side-by-side here. But we'll let this populate here. And let me stop and ask Larry, any questions that have come in?
Sure, we've had several good ones. Are you an approved preferred partner of ADP, WFN, Workforce?
Yes, we are. We're a preferred partner. We're a partner, an integration partner with several companies, ADP, UKG. There are several others as well, and most of them are listed on. In fact, we'll send you a slide deck after this, and it'll have all of our partners on it as well, so you can see them. But yes, ADP is one of them.
Thank you, Dan. Are the personas customizable?
So the personas are not customizable. There are about 18 of them. But they do change based on gender. So if you choose male, they will be all male. If you choose female, they'll be female. If you choose non-binary or you don't choose, there'll be a mix. So if that was, sometimes that's the question. It's like, oh, they looked all male, but they're not. But they are fixed, and they're based on combinations of the characteristics in our assessment. And that's why they're how they are.
But Dan, you might want to clarify that you can add to, like you did to Juan's, prescriptive conversations and things like that. I don't know if that's part of that.
What's that, Larry?
That you can add to the prescriptive conversation, such as like, I prefer to use text as opposed to don't leave me a voicemail, that type of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. So those tips, communication tips are customizable, but those personas are the ones that are defined.
Great.
But there are several.
Go ahead, Dan.
No, go ahead.
How does the platform get the data for the characteristics?
Yeah,
Great
so
question.
it's we have a proprietary assessment. It's 10 to 12 minutes in length, 36 questions, any device. We have it in multiple languages. And once you've taken that assessment, then it immediately will configure your talent portal, and that's where the data comes from. That rolls up if you've got a team, then that rolls up into those team comparisons and all those other views that I showed you. And as I mentioned, sorry, I was just gonna say that for those that missed that part, it is based on science that goes back to the 1930s. There are a couple of different studies that those different lenses are based on, but it's all validated science. We just found a quicker and easier way to access that data. Okay, Larry.
Do you integrate with any HRIS applications?
We do. Technically, we can integrate with any HRIS and ATS. We have several integrations already. Those partners will also be listed on what we send you later. But UKG, ISIMS, Workday. There's a handful. It's usually based on demand. But assuming that the ATS is willing to integrate with us, we have an open API, so we can integrate with anyone. And usually that takes a couple of weeks.
Interesting one. How do you make sure the tools get used on a regular basis?
That is a great question. So two-part answer to that. Number one is best practice. Make this part of your process. So we've had, most of our clients, and I don't know if our our head of client success is on, I think something like 93% renewal rate every year. We do work on an annual subscription. And what we find is, there are a couple of key ingredients to make, to have people use this and make sure you're getting the value out of it. Number one is certainly having buy-in from leadership, right? So to have, if you just say, oh, we brought this tool here, have at it. Some people are going to use it. Some people, may not. But if you actually implement it into part of your processes, then it becomes much more adopted. People really get interested in it, get into it. Now, are you going to have 100% adoption? Probably not. But what we find, or what our clients find, is if you have, 1 out of 10 people who use it, you'll get the incremental value. You'll see the ROI. You'll see your Net Promoter Scores grow up. So there's a lot of value there, even if you don't get 100% adoption. But adding it to your one-on-one meetings, maybe you have weekly or biweekly one-on-one meetings, using it as part of that, right? If you have your annual reviews, or maybe hopefully not annual, they're quarterly reviews or monthly, add them to part of that. Like, make that part of the process, and it really kind of gets people using it and excited about it. And so that's a great question that we get all the time. I think Vic said one more question. We're at the half hour, a little bit over. So
Yeah.
maybe one good one.
Yeah.
By the way, Larry, before you go, for those of you who asked questions and they didn't get answered, we will look at those and we'll reply to you with an answer. Vic, hopefully we can save these questions when we log off here, and we can get back to you all on those answers.
Okay. So one other thing to add, Dan, to the last question is remember that your associates' work processes aren't going to be changed, because we're actually embedded right in, as you saw Dan's demonstration, into Outlook, into Teams. So your habits are still the same. It's still the same workflow that you're doing every day. It just gives you that accessibility and feeds it to you. So that makes it a common use. So what are some other use cases, Dan, that we can add to this? And I have one top of mind.
Yeah, why don't you go, and then I'll go after you.
Yeah. So, and this is as I mentioned, I came on board about 8 months ago, and part of my digitized onboarding package was the personas of my team, and specifically my manager. So what that did for me, it allowed me, before I even got feet on the ground, if you will, to have a good idea and understanding, take some anxiety away, a good understanding how to approach people, who I'm working with, what type of team we have. So, imagine that because you're constantly bringing people in. So right at the beginning, I'm already taught to use this, and it becomes a routine for me as we go. So that's one, Dan. I don't know if you have any others to add.
Yeah, I mean, there are several. One of them, I'm out here on the West Coast, and Bank of the West is a client of ours. They just got acquired by Bank of Montreal, and they actually use this in their leadership training courses. They found that a lot of times, you do these leadership training courses, and you do like a 2 or 3 day kind of offsite, and people learn a lot, and then they forget it, and they realize that unless it's a muscle that you exercise constantly, the benefits are gonna disappear. So they use Humantelligence as part of that program, and then after the program, their team and team leaders and teams use this as part of their ongoing learning. That's one example. Honda has been a client of ours for a long time. They use this for their teams as well. And I think another good example is I'm trying to think of the most recent ones we've had. ChenMed is a client of ours. They're in the medical field, and that's an interesting one because they don't have teams that are like, some of you, if you're in the medical, I know some of you out there I saw are in the healthcare space. Those teams tend to be different, right? It's not like teams of, at a technology company where you're basically working with the same people all the time. You have different, there might be a different physician or a PA or a medical assistant working in different teams. And so ChenMed is using it to collaborate more effectively with teams that are constantly changing. So a couple examples there. And I think I'm being told we should wrap it up. And again, we'll get back to any questions you have. Let's see, we've got still a bunch of people hanging on here. So Larry, why don't you take one more question? And then
The simple one. Yeah, this is a software as a service, and it is a subscription-based model.
So is that the question?
Yeah, well, no, that was the question. That's the answer. They asked, is it a subscription-based? And it is, and it's a SaaS model.
Okay. And so, by the way, I'll just share this last screen with you. So I know we had the issue showing the side by side. I wanted to show you that. So just quickly here, this is that side by sides. This is Carrie, who I mentioned, and myself. We're at 35, so it talks about our top similarities, our top differences. And as you scroll down, it will highlight any similarities we have and any differences. And if you hover over it, it'll tell you what, again, if you read these, there's no good or bad. It's like, oh, Dan's bad, Carrie's good. Just two people who are different. And, I'll say, Carrie may be on here. We worked together for 5 years, and, you can see 35, we're so different that, we still have friction when we work together, but we have been able to manage it and be productive together because we use Humantelligence, we recognize we're different, and it takes the personal element away from it, right? It's not just, I don't like that guy, or I can't work with him. We recognize why we're having friction and why we're different, and we're able to address it and work productively through it. So I just wanted to share that with you guys and stop sharing. Thank you all for joining us, and those that you remained, we appreciate it. And we will, I think, as Vic mentioned, you'll be getting something from us for everyone who registered and attended. We'll send you the slide deck that we used today with some additional slides with some screenshots, and we'll send you the recording of this video as well. So thanks again, and we hope to hear from you soon. Larry, any parting words?
Thanks, everyone. We really appreciate your time, and look forward to chatting with you if you have a need.
Yep, we'll be reaching out to you all with this follow-up, but obviously if there's a keen interest, feel free to reach out to us as well.